Today, my friends, we're going to talk about house hacking. I keep seeing all these videos about how to house hack. How to house hack is not the problem. You buy a house and you hack it. That's the easy part. But there are a lot of mistakes you can make along the way. So rather than explaining to you what house hacking is, like most of the videos I've been seeing out there today, I'm going to give you 5 common mistakes that I see when you're house hacking, you're pretty much going to be a newbie real estate investor. You're going to be getting into your first or maybe your second property. So you don't really know what you're doing. So I'm going to tell you 5 common mistakes to avoid if you want to get into house hacking. Let's talk about it right now.
Shut up and sit down.
Just in case this is your first time here, this is the Retirement Mentality channel. This is a place where I want to change your mentality about retirement, about how you think about money. I talk a lot about reaching financial independence, retiring early, getting out of the rat race, and I talk about doing it through buying real estate. So if that is what you're trying to do, you, my friend, are in the right place. Think about subscribing to the channel. I've got a lot of content on here, but today we're going to talk about some mistakes in house hacking. Okay, number 1, the first mistake that I see people doing is buying the wrong kind of property. There's a couple ways you can do house hacking. You can buy a single family, you can buy a duplex, a triplex, a fourplex. More than likely, that's where it's going to end. That's where your choices are going to end if you're a first-time real estate investor, because after a 4-unit property, the financing choices sort of dry up. So you can get into a 1 to 4 unit property with as little as 3% down. But that's not what I want to emphasize. You may probably already know that if you're looking into getting into house hacking. A lot of people, the most common thing people do is they buy a duplex. And if you're going to buy a duplex, a lot of people, it's very common. There's an upstairs unit and a downstairs unit. And this is not the ideal type of property to buy for house hacking, especially if you're going to live in the property, even if you're just going to own it as a rental, because you've always got somebody upstairs making noise and you've got always somebody downstairs mad at somebody upstairs for making noise. There's always some animosity and people hitting the ceiling with the broomstick. Boom, boom, boom. Hey, keep it down up there. Okay, thank you. That's the kind of activity you get a lot of when you have an up-down duplex. I just got a wireless microphone so I can run around the house a little bit more and be a little bit more animated for you guys. It's very exciting for me. Okay, the same goes for if you're buying a 3-plex or a 4-plex type of a unit, is try to get side-by-side units. Sometimes there's 2 up, 2 down in a 4-plex. Same kind of scenario is going to happen there. So think about, how you want, especially if you're going to live in the property, think about how you want to interact with your tenants, with your neighbors, because you're their landlord. So you're going to have to keep that in mind. We're going to talk more about this in a minute, but think about how you will interact with your tenants, but also down the road, maybe you move out of this and you buy another property and think about how your tenants will interact with each other. You want the least amount of problems and the least amount of mad neighbors, and you want people to stay in there for as long as possible and not move out, because turnover is what kills you in the rental game. Okay, number 2. This is probably the most common mistake people make, is they rent to their friends. If you're living in a single family house, you're renting out bedrooms, this might be your best bet, because you're going to maybe be sharing a kitchen and a bathroom and common spaces. So maybe you want to rent to somebody that you know. But if you're doing the duplex, the triplex, the fourplex, the side-by-side units, because we don't want the up and down units, you probably don't want to rent to your friends, because what are you going to do when they're late on their rent? What are you going to do when they don't pay their rent? What are you going to do when they want to get out of their lease early? When they say, hey man, I found a better place down the street. Like, can you just let me out of this lease, buddy? They're always going to want something from you. They're always going to want to be treated like a friend. And it's going to cause friction in your friendship. And you need to treat this as a business. What a segue for number 3. You've got to treat it like a business. Even if you're not renting to your friends, let's say you listen to your old pal Jeff here and you do not rent it to your friends, you still have to treat it like a business. It's harder when you're living in the property and you're house hacking, even if it's a duplex or a triplex, to let some of the things slide, like collecting deposits, like filling out leases, all these things. If you're in a single family situation, and even if you're rented to your friends, you still got to treat this thing like a business. You need to get a deposit from them, because they can still skip out and stip you for the last month of rent. You still need to get a lease signed with them, so everybody knows who's expected to do what. You're expected to pay on this date. I'm expected to keep the heating and the cooling up to date and the refrigerator working. You've got to know who's responsible for what, because otherwise you as the landlord, you might say, well, hey, the fridge broke. I want everybody to chip in. And they might be like, hey, bro, you're the landlord. Go get a new fridge. So you've got to know what's expected of whom, and you do that through leases, through paper trails, through deposits. So treat it like a business. That way, when you do get to an eviction or a late payment, you don't have to say like you made up like to your tenant, like, hey, you owe me an extra $50. Like, what are you talking about? You say, look, it's in the lease. You signed it right here. This is what we agreed on. I need you to pay me that money. So treat it like a business, document things, cover your butt. And that's a good piece of advice right there, because that will come back and bite you in the butt if you don't do it. Okay, number 4, huge mistake people make is counting on the rental income to be able to afford it. You've got to figure out how to afford this thing on your own, so that if it's empty, if your roommates move out, if your tenant moves out and the market changes, it's not going to make you go broke and go into foreclosure. You're doing this to build wealth. If you try to do it too soon and you're trying to use roommates or house hacking to afford something that you can't afford, it's a good recipe to go broke. That's how I went broke the first time around. Was I didn't have enough equity in my properties, and when the market tanked, I got foreclosed on 3 properties. So, make sure you can afford the house before you start house hacking. Have an emergency fund set up. I know everybody, you just want to retire, you want to fire and retire early as fast as possible, but don't make the mistakes of over leveraging and getting into something that you can't afford. You could lose your job, whatever can happen. Different things can happen in the world. So just make sure you've got contingency plans, you've got reserve accounts and things set aside, so that if a roof springs a leak and you need to get a repair, you can afford that. If somebody moves out, you can afford a couple months of paying it on your own without having those roommates or those tenants, because I'm telling you, it's a recipe for disaster. So, when people just buy real estate, they go to the mortgage broker and they say, how much can I afford? And then they buy the maximum amount they can afford, and that gets people into trouble too. Well, don't do this on the house hacking side either. Don't get the biggest thing, the most expensive thing, and then count on that rental income. Buy something you can afford, and then use that income to live for free or to make a profit, and use it to buy more real estate. And you can't do that if you go broke or you get a foreclosure on you. It's going to kill you for any future gain. So just be careful and don't get something too big. Just buy what you can afford. And number 5, boy, my segues today are really good. Number 5 is not getting ready to buy the next property. So if you're trying to do this to reach financial independence, which hopefully that's why you're watching this video, you're going to want to buy another one and another one and another one. So when you've got that income coming in from your renters, from your roommates, from whatever it is, be sure that you're claiming that income on your tax return, because when you go to buy your next property, you're going to have to qualify for the debt of property number 1, and you're going to have to qualify for the debt of property number 2. So if you've got some $50,000 a year W-2 job, you're not going to be able to afford $200,000 houses or a $250,000 single family, and you want to go buy a duplex, whatever it is. But when you show that income on your taxes, after you have a 12-month history of showing rental income on your taxes, then the bank will look at the rental income and help you use that to qualify. My accountant's head always exploded because I didn't take all the deductions and I didn't show all the expenses that I could, because I needed to show a profit on my taxes so that I could keep, especially if you get 3 or 4 properties, I needed that income from those properties to help me to qualify to buy the next property. So I actually ended up probably paying more taxes and showing less depreciation and less expenses than I could, because I needed to buy more properties. And in the long run, it's a good strategy, because now I don't have to work because I have all my properties paying for my bills. So now I don't have to qualify for any more loans. So now I can take full advantage of all those deductions and write-offs and expenses and things that I didn't get to in the past. I hope you got something useful out of those 5 tips. If you did, go and watch this video over here, because this video will tell you how to get into buying your first real estate as well. So if you like this one, go watch this one. Give me a big thumbs up. It really helps me so that I can make more videos just like this for you. Thanks, and we'll see you in the next video.